My name is Dr. Cynthia Hickman, and the next time that you meet a caregiver, I want you to show them some love and appreciation. I am your proactive caregiver advocate. I wrote a book entitled From the Lens of Daughter, Nurse, and Caregiver, A Journey of Duty and Honor. I wrote a book after caring for my mother for 20 years, along with my hubby. Give him some love over there, y'all. We lived in Houston, outside of Houston, Texas. My mother lived in Toledo, Ohio, where she raised all of us. And at some point, at the age of 77, it was necessary for her to come live with us. My mother was the first in her family to attend college. She attended Wilberforce University. She met a tall, dark, and handsome man, my dad, and together they had 4 amazing girls. We were the alphabet girls, also called the TK girls. Who knows what TK girls were? We were teachers' kids. But my dad felt the need to name us in alphabetical order. There was Anita, Brenda, Cynthia, and Diana. And of course, Cynthia, you got it, was the cutest. My mother was an educator. Her favorite color was blue. I'm wearing blue in honor of her. She was an amazing person, but because she lived in a house in Toledo, Ohio that had basements where the washer and dryer and the hot water heater sat, and going down those stairs was very difficult for someone at 77 years old. So she came to us. She settled into Texas quite well, and we found a senior citizen center for her to attend. And while at the senior citizen center, my mother, Mommy, what I called her, found her a boyfriend, Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry was from Barbados. Now, I've been told that island men like it hot. Well, my mother was hot. One Christmas at the center, they had a gift exchange. Mr. Henry got my mother's name, and Mr. Henry bought my mother a gift. And the gift was a camisole negligee with a pair of panties missing a whole lot of material. And I said, well, Mama, that's nice. But Mr. Henry won't see you in that. It's underwear. Well, as any other day getting Mother ready for the center, I would always get her dressed. For this particular Friday, the last day of the Christmas center, I didn't do it. And I cannot remember to this day as we speak where I was. But my mind said, proactive caregiver advocate, go check on the seniors. Give them some Christmas cheer. Tell them hello, which I did. So as I walked in the center, and as I got closer to my mother, my eyes got bigger and bigger. I could not believe my eyes. My mommy had put on that camisole negligee under a suit jacket, and I dare to imagine that she had them panties on. And guess who was sitting close by, taking it all in, y'all? Mr. Henry from Barbados. Well, Mr. Henry saw his nice Christmas gift on my mother. And of course, at the center, knowing Cynthia, Mama, why do you have that on? She said, sit down, Cynthia, and be quiet. That was for the record book. That was for the record book. But when did things change? A trip to a museum in Houston, because my mother was an educator, I always tried to keep her mind and eye-hand coordination intact. We went to a geometric section where you put round holes and round pegs and round holes, and square pegs and square holes. And I noticed that my mother, instead of putting them directly in, she was sliding them in and putting them in. My proactive mind said, something's going on with her vision. But what I did say was, Mama, stop acting old. couple days later, we made appointments. Took her to the eye doctor, and sure enough, she had bilateral cataracts. Of course, we got the cataracts removed, and guess what? She was up and running again and making Google eyes at who? Mr. Henry. Yes. I was able to find a period in my caregiving world to attend a nursing conference. On my return from the conference, I noticed that my mother looked different. Her color had changed. Her feet were swollen, and I took her to the doctor, and that ended her in the hospital. It was at that time that I retired from my job on August the 13th, 2013. August the 13th, 1920, was my mother's birthday. I retired on her birthday, early retirement. I decided to become, my husband and I, full-time caregivers. So as I think about the caregiving journey, there's a couple of things I want to share with you. My mother was like a tree. She had a trunk that was strong. She had roots that were granite, that were placed, that were strong. She had branches with lots of leaves and trees. She had caregiving excitement. She had fun. She had all these wonderful things that were on this tree. But what I want to share with you is a part of that tree was the reality of taking care of an elderly person where your life and death situations matter. When I decided to take care of her, we talked about the what ifs, the end of life. I promised my mother I would never put her in a nursing home. I promised my mother she would never die in a hospital with tubes and all that. And she was on the same page with that. Let me fast forward to the final hospitalization my mother had. A urinary tract infection and confusion caused her to have a hospital admission. The first night was mine where I stayed, and I always took documents to put on her chart, the do not resuscitate, the healthcare directives, and I gave that to the admitting nurse. The next morning, I came home to shower and rest. Hubby and my sister took on the morning of that hospital stay. An hour or so later, my husband called screaming, "Mom is coding, and they're putting a tube down her throat." I must have made it to that hospital in 7 minutes, when I'm sure the hospital was every bit of 20 minutes away. I got to the hospital and I screamed, "What are you all doing? Why do you all have that in her? Where's her records on her chart?" The admitting nurse had forgot to put the records on her chart. But God had a plan. My mother had not seen all four of her girls together in a long time. I called my sister, one in Toledo, one in Cincinnati, to have the conversation about what was going on. They didn't hear anything I said. The next day, my sisters traveled to Texas, and we had the conversation about taking my mother off of the ventilator. The day came to remove her off the ventilator. We all were there. We took her off the ventilator, and my mother started breathing on her own. That was God's plan, y'all, of bringing her daughters together. I took my mother home into hospice. On August 13th, 2017, we gave my mother the biggest birthday party you can imagine. She turned 97 years old. I even sang happy birthday with an oscillating fan and called it a guitar. 7 days later, on August the 20th, 2017, my mother closed her eyes this side of heaven. The journey was real. The journey was raw. And the journey was mine. My name is Dr. Cynthia J. Hickman. I'm your proactive caregiver advocate. I wrote a book entitled From the Lens of Daughter, Nurse, and Caregiver, a journey of duty and honor. Thank you.